Hello and welcome to the Made for More podcast. I have got an amazing guest on today. I am very honoured and excited to have the wonderful Jane Anderson on today. And if you are listening, you are in for an absolute treat, I am sure. So welcome, Jane. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, Ali.
Fabulous. Before we get too far into it, Jane, are you able to share where you've come from and where you're going?
Yeah, sure. So I'm based in Brisbane in Australia. So you probably maybe have some listeners who are local or overseas, but I grew up in northern New South Wales. So most of my life was growing up in hippies and at the beach and all that sort of stuff. So I'm sort of a country beachy background is sort of where I've come from. And I moved to Brisbane when I was 18, when I finished university. But a big part of when I was growing up was that I worked, I loved working part-time and I loved jobs and working and earning my own money. But what I did do is from the age of 14, I worked for a family called the Mathers family. And the Mathers family, a shoe chain that started here in Brisbane. And the owner, so Sir Robert Mathers, was one of my very first mentors. So I worked for the family for 15 years. And so their personal brand, like this part of branding, there was no sort of thing called a personal brand many years ago, but they did it. Everybody has one and they had theirs. And it was, a big part of that was the brand, their name was their business and also their reputation in the community. And when Sir Robert was knighted, that was around Expo 88 time. And that was a long time ago, kind of showing my age. But, I was really fortunate to grow up working with a family that really understood what your name means in the community and leading community. So they were very involved and, they're like family to me. So I'm still friends and still catch up with them a lot. So, and I was very fortunate to know, I went on to run their stores. So I went on to work for Sir Robert's youngest daughter and I was her area manager running her stores. And my job really was to maintain the family reputation and the brand and the consistency of the delivery of the service and the family values. And so as a result, so I did that right from high school through university. And then I went on to work as a HR advisor in government. And so I was based in Toowoomba and covered like Thargomindah and Charleville and all those sorts of places and Hervey Bay and Maryborough. But then I went on to, my last corporate role was the Learning and Development Manager for Super Retail Group. So Super Cheap Auto, BCF, Gold Cross Cycles, Race Outdoors. So I looked after the people capability for around 10,000 people and built the leadership programs there. And a big part of that was building personal brand of leaders and being able, and it was part of the retention strategy to keep those leaders ready because they had a massive growth strategy. Yeah. And there's a lot of investment put into those leaders to keep them for the next 5 to 8 years was my job to help them do that. So very involved in online learning and rollouts right through to executive coaching and all that sort of side of things. Yeah. And then from there, but I'd always wanted to have my own business and my own practice. And so 10 years ago, I started doing that. And I just started, doing it on Saturday mornings and Monday nights and, things like that. And then ever since then, I really started off with as a career practitioner and career counselling. So, but a big part of that was, again, helping people build their brand and communicate their value to be able to get their jobs and stuff like that. And today, now it's working. So I work across with experts in their field. So speakers, trainers, coaches, consultants, and helping them to build their brand, their thought leadership, their IP, and build their communities and tribes. And then I also work within corporate and work with leaders, also universities, researchers, academics, in building their thought leadership to create commercial ventures and opportunities with research institutes and collaborations with industry, and speak at conferences, write a few books, and that sort of chews up my time pretty quick.
And then, just relax in all of that in between time. Yeah. And I think you and I actually met at one of your speaking events or at the Professional Speakers Association way back when, the beginning of the year when that was still happening. And I think I heard you speak in a few of the other certified speaking professionals, or
Yes.
CSPs, and I was like, wow, I need to get amongst these people because they're talking about some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
What I'd love to talk about today, and you touched on just in your intro just now, was around the retention strategy for leaders in corporate. And I think this is something that we don't really talk about enough, or don't put enough weight on, is in this day and age where we can kind of find information and find new jobs and go career hopping, is we really undervalue the value of retaining some really good people. So can you talk me through, a little bit around the strategy for that group, but also what it was with the standout points around why it was so important to retain good leaders?
Yeah, so it was a really interesting time. So back then it was nearly 10 years ago. So it was 2009, 2010. And there are a few things that were going on. So at the time, Super Retail Group was headed up by Peter Birtles, who was also CEO of the Year, voted CEO of the Year, an extraordinary CEO and the most amazing CEO I've ever worked for. And he had a really clear vision that very committed to people and within the organisation. But they had an aggressive growth strategy, and it was coming off the back of the GFC. So they identified that, okay, we've got as much as we've been able to do, say, store-wise with the super retail stores. Now what we have to do is bring on other brands. So at the time, they had BCF at the time, but what they did was they went through an acquisitions phase. So acquiring Gold Cross Cycles and Raise Outdoors. They since went on to acquire Amart Sports and Rebel Sport.
Oh, wow. Real
yes.
protection.
So there was, and they had great supply chains, great, really understanding the retail space, and they were growing really quickly. And so the biggest challenge, there were a few challenges at the time. One was at a store level, where we had an issue. We had 75% of our team members at the time were millennials. And we had a turnover, they would typically turn over sort of around the 6-month mark, which was not good. We had a real problem. So my job, first of all, was to tackle that problem. And that was to put better capability training opportunities in place for managers. So that was sort of one of the first steps of really the foundation of the pipeline of talent for the future of the organisation, particularly because of the acquisitions phase. So there was that and core capability. Then the second part was looking at the next level of leaders in the organisation. So getting them ready for the executive team. So they were sort of, if you said, tier 3 leaders, store level, say tier 4. So if you said this tier 3, you needed to get them ready for tier 2.
Right.
And so that was they were usually 12-month projects. And there are a few things that, one was that the big thing with that brand is that you've got also the issue of silos and not having economies of scale. That was an opportunity there. So a few things that we worked on. One was leadership identity. So who they were as a leader. And helping them to really knuckle down into, well, who am I and what am I trying to achieve? And so that they could also see their alignment with their own purpose and with the organizational purpose and feel really connected to that. Another part of that, and they hadn't done anything like that before. So this was really quite new. The other part to that was getting them working together. So part of that was increasing the putting in projects where they could work together to increase efficiencies and save money, like getting better buying rates on products. Like, for example, if you had one of the issues, opportunities that was found as one of the projects, the buyer who buys car batteries, who was buying them for the super retail stores, there was also a buyer who was buying batteries for boats in BCF.
Right.
Now, they had not actually spent much time together, but there was a massive cost saving in them working together and being able to negotiate a better deal on boat and on batteries.
Wow.
So it was looking across, a lot of it was looking across product lines, getting them to collaborate and think and come up with ways and strategies to be able to create better cost effectiveness, or it was either cost saving or revenue generating activities.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. And then the big part of it was building a coaching capability within the organisation.
Yeah.
And to be able to get them empowered to be able to bring that those skills and that talent through as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, as a coach, you know that I'm a huge advocate for getting leaders to coach their teams, because I think it's one of the best hands-on skills a coach can have in terms of empowering
Yes.
both the teams and themselves. But you mentioned earlier around working with the leadership across the different organizations on their leadership identity and, you know, who they are and what it is that they stand for. Can you touch a little bit on that, I guess, for today's leaders when we are in this world where, you know, 6 months, probably no one at the moment is thinking 6-month mark, they might move on. But can we talk a little bit around how, as a leader, you identify your own identity?
Yeah. So, and it's a different challenge than it was, I think, even today compared to 10 years ago. So, if you look at his name escapes me. So there's a gentleman who did some research. He's one of the world leading research. His name will come to me. Around what creates identity, first of all.
Yeah.
So, and when identity forms. So years ago, you know, your identity was formed formally when you were 18 years old, because now you're formally an adult.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, then that's how society sees you, because that was typically the marriage age many years ago, and that's sort of how it started. But today, the marriage age many years ago was sort of around 23 or the late teens, early 20s. But today, the marriage age is typically around 30. And so what that means is that over that time, if you compare to many years ago, identity was formed as a result of not having a lot of choices. So that's why people got married younger. So, you know, if you think about when you finished school back then, you know, you didn't have gap years, and you didn't have TAFE, and you didn't have, you didn't have apprenticeships and, you know, all that sort of stuff. But today we've got all that. Then on top of that, you've also got social platforms that form identities and create opportunities, but also a lot of problems for some people as well. But what that does mean is that people have exposure to other forms of validation of their identity. So that takes longer. And so what that means for organizations, particularly for leaders, so in the case that I had, where I had millennials, 75% of the workforce and the leaders were millennials, was the problem was, who am I? Because of all these social forces. And so what that means is that you're trying to work out, as a result, where does my purpose and my and who I am and what am I trying to achieve here? And so otherwise what happens is it just becomes focused on how much am I paid, and that's not the identity that we want. And that's not a validator. And we know from the research, if we look at, you know, Jess Price Jones and her work around the science of happiness at work and all that sort of stuff, that does not equal engagement. Is just simply knowing that you're being paid well. So that was really a big part of that. So to help people to form their identity was a big part was starting to delve into their brand and how brand is formed. So same as the exact same thing that we do for an organization: vision, values, purpose, all that same stuff. And you know, at the end of the day, we're all an entity and a business in ourselves. We sell our time for, you know, it just happens that our employer is our number one customer. You know, is this the customer we want to work with? So a big part of that was actually helping those leaders to say, well, you know, I sell my time in exchange for my services, and helping them feel like, well, this is not, it can be a bit disempowering sometimes, feeling like you're owned by the organization, but this is about, well, what's your identity and who do you sell your time to? And empowering them to feel a little bit more in their identity and what they are and what they're trying to do.
Yeah. I love that take on it. So I talk a lot around leadership mindset, but I think
Mm,
you've hit the nail on the head there when you start actually thinking about how it is that you are selling your time to your organization, then it automatically means that you need to step into that position, whether it's leadership by
mm,
title or leadership by, by mindset and actually getting stuff done and owning your own role. I think that's
mm,
really a really interesting way to think about it. Can you talk a little bit around, I know thought leadership is your jam. Can you
mm.
talk a little bit around what it is that defines thought leadership?
Yeah. So, and I think even a step before that can kind of be what is even a thought leader. So,
Oh, yes.
because it's one thing to have thought leadership, but then there's also another around that identity again around you as a thought leader. And so my background, I've spent 7 years in Thought Leaders Business School, and I was one of the first group to go through there with the one and only Matt Church. So for
Beautiful.
some, some of your listeners may know who he is. He created Thought Leaders Business School. He's written a lot of books on it, and he's probably the person who's created, the most personal brands, I guess, in the
Yep.
country.
Yeah,
And
wow.
his definition of a thought leader, he says that, and I really like his definition. He says that if you're a thought leader, like if you're an expert or you're a subject matter expert, you know something, and a thought leader is known for knowing something.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
So yeah, so it's just a bit of a distinction between, it's one thing to know something, but it's quite different to be known for knowing something.
Yeah.
And that takes a bit of courage and a bit of bravery to put yourself out there to do that. And then what leads on to the second part of that question is, so what is thought leadership? If you're going from there to going, okay, if I am a thought leader, then the question is, so what do you think? And as a real distinction, I guess we run, as you know, we do content club and
Yeah.
content creation boot camp. So I teach content creation. But when you're starting to step into thought leadership, is that the question is about how do you advance the thinking in the field? So
Yeah.
if you're an expert in, resilience, then you're aggregating, you're looking at people like the Brene Browns and the Margie Worrells and the Thich Nhat Hanh and, all those people, and you're going, well, and what do I think about that? And do you agree and do you not agree? And what do you build on? And you say, well, I like a bit of that and a bit of that, but I disagree with that bit. I think it's this.
Yeah.
And it can sometimes bring in some modeling, and to really, you're leveling up and advancing the thinking and
Yeah.
taking it forward.
Yeah. I think you touched on something which I think is absolute gold. So I'm going to point it out in case
Mm,
anyone missed it that was listening. And it was around positioning yourself as a thought leader. So being
mm,
known for knowing something. And whilst I think from an employee perspective, and when you do work within an organization, you're like, oh, that's more of a business thing. But now that you've said that, being known for knowing something, I think we're probably all at some unique level known for knowing something within organizations.
yeah.
So can you talk a little bit more about how is it that you become known for knowing something?
Yeah, such a great question. So the first question is who do you want to be known by?
Ah,
So
love it. Who do you want to be known by? That's good.
because, and I'm sure you find this, which alludes to your question around, because not everybody wants to be a New York Times bestseller. Not everybody wants to be on, but it might be more so that you don't want to leave your job or anything like that. I don't want to be a thought leader and start a practice, and I don't want all that. But I really love what I do, and I really want to be able to advance the thinking, but I want to stay within my organization. I love, being in that space. So I think a good example of something like that is an organization we're working with at the moment. And there's one particular leader I've got in there who, there's two elements to it. One is that they like the organization, they don't want to leave, but they've sort of got to a point in their career where they don't want to be the CEO, but they have so much knowledge and so much expertise, and they're a great coach and all that sort of thing. And so there's an opportunity for them to position themselves in, not just within the organization, but in the industry, but still stay within the organization. So in other words, based on their knowledge, They're writing a blog. And again, they've said, I don't want to leave my job. This is just my creative outlet. This is my interest, my passion. And so as a result, what's happening is that they are sharing their expertise in a way that's not, that you've got, and see today, as you know, we've got Yammer, we've got Microsoft Teams, we've got Facebook Workplace, the platforms that are created. I think a really good example of this is Heineken.
Yeah.
So Heineken had the chief brewer. I don't know if you've heard this story, but the chief brewer in Heineken, when they put in Facebook Workplace, they were trying to work out the group architecture of how they were going to do it. And they started with, well, who are the thought leaders? Who are the key influencers?
Yes.
Because that will drive, who are the people who are most passionate about their expertise, because they've got to drive the content.
Yeah.
And the thought leadership. So they started with the chief brewer. And because that's such a core part of the brand, and everybody loves, beer in there, but particularly the brewers from the other countries. So he started the first group and would share all his tips and passions and curating and saying, we should be doing this. And he'd speak at some conferences. And so as a result, it cultivated this passion and excitement, but it wasn't driven from the CEO, and it doesn't need to. It's from someone who is the expert in there, but he didn't want to leave Heineken. He felt so much connection with the brand, but he was and again, it's not just knowing something, but him being known for knowing something and being able to share that passion and expertise with others in the organization. So I always think of someone like that where, and it does, and they can go on to be able to speak at conferences. They can write a blog, do all those things, but not necessarily. And the organisation benefits because it's great positioning for the organisation, because people go, wow, what if that could be me? Maybe I could work there. I could achieve my potential, and I could be fully self-expressed in my career. And I think Dr. Arena Yashinshaw talks, who is an expert in innovation and creativity. She's based here in Brisbane, and she's the founder of the Intrapreneur Institute, and she describes these people as intrapreneurs. I think of them as internal thought leaders, but they're almost like got an entrepreneurial mindset, but within the organisation.
I hadn't heard that term before. I'm going to have to check that out. I like that idea. So with your Heineken person, obviously if you're the head brewer, then you've got a bit of street cred already. But if you are not yet, in charge of an entire section or a department, where do you think leaders need to get started? They're like, what, I think I know a thing or two. I'm really passionate about my role. I'm passionate about my company. I want to do better. I want to show up. What do you think would be step one?
Yeah, I reckon one place would be to start is think about a project that you would like to work on. So, and so to give you an example, there was one client I worked with who was really committed to, she created this really great project in the compliance area of this organisation, and she
that sounds fun.
And I know she loved it. Not my cup of tea, but she was amazing at it, and she was so passionate about it, and she created some amazing results, and it was really innovative what she did. So she reduced the amount of questions that were asked in the call center or in the customer help desk. Like the metrics and everything behind it were amazing, and she was just so passionate about it. So, but she chose that she didn't consciously choose this for it to go down this path. But what happened was, as a result of that project, was not only the recognition she got in the organization to say, this is, she's the expert, Kelly's the expert. If you want to know about compliance, go talk to Kelly. But what she did was she shared that success in the Compliance Institute. So the other part to that is thinking about your tribe and the communities that you're around and who you can lead. So you've got leading within your organization, but also, if you think about rising tides, they say rising tides float all boats. So not seeing your peers as threats, but as a way to share and collaborate and share your experiences. So she went on to, she shared that case study at their conference. She also happened to win an award for it.
Wow.
And so that created then back in the organisation the influence in there that she was more heard because of the credibility of these things happening, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think once you've got a bit of credit outside of the organization, it's almost like it's harder to get the credibility when you're within there. You know, you can't see the label from inside the jar. And when you start getting some of that external recognition and the accolades, that's when it becomes far more obvious that this is actually some unique thought leadership. So just on that note, and this is a bit of a loaded question because I'm fairly sure I know what you're going to say, whereabouts do you think, you know, how important is LinkedIn having an online presence if you are in a leadership role or looking to get into a leadership role around positioning yourself?
Yeah, good question. So a couple of things. So LinkedIn, and first of all, I get LinkedIn is a very vulnerable place to be, you know.
Okay.
Like, I think there's two things. It's very vulnerable and exposed, and there's a lot of fear with putting your thoughts and ideas out there. There's the imposter syndrome that kicks in. I don't know if what I've got to say is good enough. Who would listen to me? Would anybody even pay attention? What if nobody likes it? And what if I get trolled? And equally, what if I say the wrong thing and my employer gets upset? What if I sabotage my career? You know, there's all this fear that comes with that. So the first thing I would say is LinkedIn is really powerful, and it's a massive opportunity for you to position yourself to be known for what you want to be known for. The other thing too that is an opportunity is by putting your thinking out there, is that it's not just you as the leader in your brand, but it's you as the brand ambassador. And so, you know, what's happening is that whatever you're saying is actually the brand's behavior and values that are coming through in what you're saying. So, and we do know that 75% of job seekers will go and stalk you on LinkedIn before they apply for the job that you've got advertised at the moment. And that's a key part of it, is because because as a leader, your job is to say, well, I'm representing the brand. I've got to attract great talent. And, you know, people are looking at, there's people who are lurkers and looking at what you're saying. So there's a talent attraction and what people are saying about you, but it's a big part of it is also about creating the narrative and taking control of the narrative. So if there's nothing there, or if your profile looks like an obituary, you're positioned to just get more of what you've had in the past. Whereas
if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got.
So if you're clear about where you want to go and what you want to do next, if you can position your profile that way and be writing content about that, then you're more likely to attract those opportunities.
Cool. This is probably another loaded question as well. So when we're talking about taking control of the narrative and creating content, I think this is, again, one of those other things. If you're looking to become known for what you know, where do you get started with this? I know I'm part of your content club, which is amazing. Can you maybe explain a little bit about how that works for your clients, your content creators?
And we do content club within organisations too. We do content creation boot camps within organisations too, because leaders are having to, you know, do more video on their intranet platforms and things like that. And it's, you know, that is scary. I think sometimes it's actually more scary to do it within an organisation than it is out on LinkedIn. Sometimes people do feel more vulnerable. So there's a few things. One I would say is, if you want to get started in this space and you're thinking, okay, I think I've got something here, but I don't know if it's good enough or anything like that. One is that we have content clubs. So what we do is we jump on and we get together once a month for 2 hours and we create 10 pieces of content in 2 hours. So, and in that 2 hours is Ali's one of my victims, and but we have a lot of fun. We've got an amazing community, and the big thing is actually just getting around a group of people who are going through the same experience as you, because if you're collaborating and sharing, you actually start to realize that you've actually got some pretty good stuff. And also to be able to say, oh, I can't think of, where's the research on this, or has anyone seen any research on this particular stuff, or, you know, high performing teams, or someone will say, oh you need to go and have a look at this person's work, here's the link, and, you know, so the first thing I would say is get around some people who are doing that already, and
Yeah.
because it'll help you to get a sense of what they're doing, and you can start to imagine what it might look like for you. So Content Club's cool, and I'll share at the end. You know, people can jump in and do spend some time with us at no cost if they want to. But equally within an organisation, so we come in and do content creation boot camps where we get in and do 6 months worth of content in a day.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. And so that way they go, great. I come in, I'm planned. I know what I want. I know what my content topics are.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a little bit of pre-work that we do to get people ready. And then in a day they get in and knock it out. And then they've got all the content strategy and the pieces of the puzzle done. And then all they have to do is start doing the videos or whatever they want to do. So yeah, and the confidence really builds over time. So what I would encourage people to do, one is get around the right people, and the second one is the other one I would say is get past the perfection. Don't
yes, take some imperfect action. You're
yeah,
behind that
just
as
get
well.
a bit just have a go, and don't. I think what holds people back is they see others doing it amazingly and perfectly, and they don't see that back when they started. And
Yes.
so I just really encourage people to get in, have a go, and just and I get that's vulnerable, but get around the right people, and it'll make you feel safe, and you'll be able to get started.
And you're right, I am one of your victims, but I wouldn't call it that. I absolutely love Content Club, where we catch up for once a month, and it's amazing. When I first started, I was feeling quite vulnerable, like, you know, who am I to be showing up in amongst this group of people who are knocking out this really cool stuff? And what I am coming to realize and coming to learn is that we're all sort of in that, not, I wouldn't necessarily say the imposter syndrome space, but I don't think you recognize how unique your thoughts are until you start sharing them, and people are like, oh, I hadn't thought about it from that way. Whereas you kind of get in your own head, I call it head junk, you get in your own head around what it is that you're talking about, and don't think it's actually that unique. Whereas in actual fact, the reverse is true, that, you know, the things that we are thinking and the things that we want to be known for are very much our own flavor and our own lens. So I love Content Club. As Jane mentioned, I'll put a link in the show notes for Content Club if you want to check it out, because it is super, super fun. And I love setting aside my 2 hours a month to smash out some work. So before we wrap things up, Jane, what would be your top 5 tips for any of our listeners who are looking to, you know, become known for what they know, or, you know, move into that thought leadership space? What are your top 5 tips?
Yeah, cool. I reckon the first one is, and you touched on before, is your brand. Like, who are you, and your identity, and it can be more about not necessarily where you are now, but where you're trying to go. So you could be maybe you're repositioning. Maybe you want to be known for something different than what you're known for now. Yeah. So it doesn't always have to be what you are now. Is think about 12 to 18 months, 3 years. What would that look like, and what would that identity look like, and what would you want to be talking about in that time? So we've got to position you to move that way. So the first thing is identity. Who are you? Where you're trying to go, which kind of comes with clarity as well.
Yeah.
And when you're thinking about a leader in an organization, is in that next 12 to 18 months, what would that look like for you? Do you want to be working on specific projects? Are you looking to orient yourself towards a particular role? Like, what are the steps that need to get you there? The second one is, then you touched on it, is content. So what do I need to do? What's the content that I need to create to make that happen? Now, you might say it might not be a blog. It actually might be presentations. It might be, it could be workshops. It could be coaching programs. I don't know. It could be just so many things. Content isn't just a blog. It fits into so many different parts that it can fit in. It could be, maybe it's, as part of your specific technical area, it could be contributing to your community, which then leads to the next one, is create a community. So start to work out who are the people who I lead. So you've got your team, and that's one part of your brand, and maybe that is the community and the sort of tribe that you need to lead. maybe there's also a part of your expertise, or maybe it's even, when, I don't know if you find this, Ali, but I find sometimes people in organizations and even leaders will say, oh, there's nothing for us to get together, or there's nothing that builds our connections, that, I feel isolated, or I feel like it's just me.
Yep.
So take the lead, create the community, be the leader of that community. Don't sit back and wait. Those things really do make you known. And you might say, look, I'm going to create a little community about, maybe you're really passionate about, like your work, like it might be around courage or courageous conversations or fear. And that's how you get known, because you're the person who runs the courageous conversation group in the organization. You're the champion. So be the champion for some of those types of projects, and you'll be known for that. The other two that I've got is read. So, and I know that doesn't sound very exciting, but what happens when you read, most people will read, they'll say, I don't have time to read a book. But typically about a 200-page book, it can typically be read in about an hour and a half. And that's what most people are spending on social media each day. So you can get through a book. But the power of a book and the power of reading is it helps you to form your opinions. And when you've got reading it allows you to see if you agree, you disagree, you can start to aggregate some thinking. And that's what gives you the confidence and the courage to start to put some thinking out there. So definitely reading for all my clients, and Ali knows, she's probably heard me say this 100 times, that in our community, I really encourage our community to be reading a book a week. And you might not get, I know that sounds a lot, and we might not get through a whole book, but, download Blinkist, or, some of the book summaries, work out which are the ones that you need to read. So I'd really encourage people to do that. And then the last one I'd encourage people to do is one of the best thought leadership and positioning activities you can do is speak. So create a platform for yourself, find a way. And you might say, well, speak, does that mean speaking on stages? We're in COVID. What are you talking about? We have YouTube channels. We have all those types of things. So create a platform for yourself, whether it's a physical platform or a digital platform, and share your expertise, share your knowledge, and talk. Because what happens is when you talk is that you tap into a unique essence and your energy of who you are. And that bit is what can't be replicated. That's the bit. You might have a lot of knowledge, but your expertise, your essence combined with your expertise is what will set you apart.
I love that so much. And as you know, I'm a huge reader and love a speaking gig as well. But just to recap some of those. So the first one was around, getting clear and getting more clarity around your brand and identity and who you are and where you want to be, and future pacing that as well. So checking in if you need a pivot, content, and it doesn't necessarily have to be blogs. It can be things, like presentations. Perhaps you're writing a research paper on whatever field it happens to be. Creating a community. So you've got your team that you work with, your immediate tribe, and then and I love how this could potentially work in the example you gave with the silos and the batteries from earlier in the episode, is start looking for some of these problematic things that are happening within the organization, and become the problem solver. And reading, of course, and we'll touch on reading in just one sec as well. And then speaking, and this doesn't necessarily have to be at your AGM. It could even be saying, hey, I'm going to do something for 5 minutes at a board meeting, or I'm going to do something for 5 minutes at this other executive leadership meeting, or whatever it happens to be. And just on the topic of reading, I know that you are a huge reader. You share a resource every week, which is amazing, but you are actually the author of how many books?
7.
Lucky 7. And I've noticed just recently on your socials that you have been busy in the post, or with the post. What have you been sending out?
Yes, I'm best friends with the post office with delivering so many. Because normally I have my team here helping me pack up all the books, and then the borders are closed because they normally come in, and we do a big, Congo line, and we're packing everything. And so I'm slow as anything doing it myself because I've got to sign all the books. I recently wrote the book Catalyst Content, and it's about how to create a world-class piece of thought leadership in less than 10 minutes and how
Yep.
to leverage it 99 ways, which is what we do in Content Club.
Yeah.
And so I teach people how to, a framework to be able to get their ideas out of their head really quickly. And that includes things like even just how to research things fast, how to get good quotes, how to get good stories, and how to have a point of view. And what is it that you actually think, and how to get your thinking and your opinion going and give you a voice. And then as a result of that, what I found, and you're right, so what happened was a lot of people would say, how do you write so many books? And I'd explain the process, and then as a result, it just sort of started that I go, do you want me to teach you this? Because I found some people were getting a little bit stuck and frustrated. And so as a result, this book and the program that you're in with Content Club kind of evolved, because it was just something that people started to need help with. And before you know it, that's what we're doing. So, but the book has got a framework in it that you can have a go at, and to be able to get having a go at putting those ideas down, and then and leveraging it. So the thing is that what I find for a lot of people is they feel like, particularly if they sit down to write something, they're reinventing the wheel every time.
Yeah,
and
right.
So my experience has been is if you can create a really good piece of content, you just need one, and think once and use it often.
Yep.
So if you're creating a great piece of content, we can create a blog out of it for sure, but you could create a diagnostic out of it, a questionnaire, a survey. You could create a white paper, like the research paper you talked about. You could do a video, you could do a podcast. I found that we can generally leverage a piece of content across 40 different, up to about 40 different ways. I've put in the book 33, and then using 3 different modes, which is podcasting, video, and written. And then it's 33 times 3 is 99.
Yeah. Wow. So that's a lot. That's a lot of content that you can essentially
It
get
is a
out
lot
of.
of content.
Yeah. Talk about bang for buck.
Yes.
And I'll put the link in for Catalyst content into the show notes for anyone who would like to order that as well. I have absolutely loved having you on today's show, Jane. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your absolute golden nuggets. I think, anyone who's listening to this who is thinking that they would like to be known for what they know should definitely go and check you out at jane-anderson.com. And if you are interested in the Content Club, do the /Content Club. But thank you, Jane, so much for your time today. It's been awesome.
Thank you. My pleasure. And just on that, with the Content Club, is on that page, I've got, you can come and join us for a month for free. So if you want to come along, jump in, see what we do and hang out and, have a go at it, you're most welcome to. So jump on the page there, just register, and you can jump in for free for a month and check it out.
Amazing. Thank you. I
Thank
think
you.
that people should definitely jump on that because it is super fun and very good use of 2 hours of your time. So thank you so much, Jane. I've loved it.
Thanks so much, Ali. I really appreciate it. Bye for now.
Bye.